Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming at you with another video. All right, so um, Laker time. Let's talk about some Lakers, man. I just watched a little bit, not everything, but a little bit from Trevor Lane's stream, and he was talking about Rui Hachimura. And we've talked a lot about Rui Hachimura on this channel, and how I don't believe he's been in the right position. I think he should be a three. Um, the numbers show us that he's better in that way, and you know his numbers aren't very good. We utilize him at the four. A lot of times we have him in lineups where there's no weakest side help, and it kind of hurts us defensively at times. Although he did have a game where he had 3 blocks that we were very appreciative of. But at the end of the day, what we want to talk about is his numbers haven't been all that great. And Trevor Lane was saying something that really stood out to me. He was saying, that Troy Brown is now since taken his position as a starting player in our lineup, and that he felt that he would, it's more or less a situation where he's now showing that he's, better, more or less. Troy Brown is essentially better for us in the lineup, and we're more cap committed to Rui Hachimura. More or less, his salary's expected to be more so, and he's supposed to be more so someone that we're going to be going after in the offseason than Troy Brown. So what Trevor was essentially saying was, you guys, uh, it's becoming a conundrum now, more or less. Are we going to go after Rui Hachimura when Troy Brown is actually the better player? And I just think that's very skewed. I don't know that we can really say that one guy's better or another guy's not just because a person's in the starting lineup. If a person's in the starting lineup, there's a lot of things that can go into that. You fit, how the players complement with others and things of that nature. I don't know that it isn't accurate that it affects his value when you play him off of the bench or give it give him uh, spread out looks and attempts and awkward attempts, versus Troy, who has a more defined role, a more of a skill set that allows him to contribute more so without scoring. Uh, and just overall an ability to express his game a bit better within our unit. That doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, that he's better than Rui Hachimura, because if you send Rui Hachimura to the right situation and he's utilized for what it is that he does, you can probably get a lot out of Rui Hachimura just saying. But we're not able to based on Rui's role versus Troy Brown's role. So that's really, I think, is a more of a reflection of why he would be in the starting lineup, not necessarily a reflection of his hypothetical value elsewhere in the league. I think that's a misconception, and we've talked about it a lot of the time. Starting is not necessarily the most important thing. It's more so about the fit. And when we have the culture of guys are starting and therefore they are better than another guy, it creates the idea that there are problems where there might not necessarily be any. You know what I mean? If a player is slumping in a system, and he's a volume shooter and he doesn't really contribute in other areas, but has refined skills where he can shoot from all different angles and stuff like that from the mid range, he's still a hell of a valuable player. It's just that in the system that he's in, there's no way to get him his attempts and his rhythmic looks. It's the same thing we had with Kyle Kuzma. It's like, when Kyle Kuzma shot the ball, it was like every 5 possessions. And when we did get him the ball, it was usually him late in the shot clock, trying to get him to help us in the possession that we might have botched or something. It's like he wasn't getting the looks he needed to where he's getting them now in Washington, and you can see exactly what player he is. We couldn't showcase his value in that way, and maybe somebody would have started over him in our situation based on the fact that we could showcase them better and they fit better. But it didn't mean that when it's time to trade Kyle Kuzma, we're not valuing him more so than the person we started, based on what it is that we know he can do in other situations for which we could not showcase. So that's something to understand. And we gotta get out of the culture of just saying a guy's starting, so therefore he's better. Nah, not at all in the NBA. I think it's the opposite, and we learned that with Manu Ginobili and many others in the past. It is something that does affect players' money, though, which is why it's a matter of fact that they do look at it that way, and I think that culture needs to change. If you're gonna give guys perks for starting and give guys awards for being 6 men, then you got to respect the fact that sometimes players are on the bench for reasons that are outside of what it is that their value is. And so giving those awards accordingly does affect the value itself. And different perks that come into starting and sitting don't necessarily benefit the team. It may kind of influence the team to do things that don't cater to winning based on this culture. And I think that's always been in place. I think the NBA needs to understand that the league that it was in when players were starting versus bench had a different entire system to it. The players weren't as dynamic. You didn't have as many talented players up and down your bench. It's the same idea I have about, coaches shrinking their bench in the playoffs. I don't agree. I think it made sense when half of your team couldn't play. You want to shrink your bench to the guys that could. So, because you only had a few guys you could rely upon. But that's not the NBA we're in right now. That ain't the league we're in. You got players on your bench that are just as good, if not better, than your starters. Players on the back of your bench that need to develop and probably have intangibles that can help you in the clutch better than some of the dudes that you're using. Because the game is evolving and these are new players, but you're not using them, you're not utilizing them because you're thinking the old way of the NBA when guys weren't necessarily very talented on your bench. So this and depth wasn't necessarily respected. Injuries were not as studied as it is now. And then most importantly, all the injuries we have now, the last thing you want to do is use less bodies. And then when you talk about strategy and giving yourself an opportunity to not be as easily defended, you want more players to help you give yourself more options. So the idea that we're supposed to be shrinking our bench when the game matters most is asinine when everybody can play. So that it's like the NBA needs to evolve. The thinking, it's old, man. It's old thinking. And the idea that guys who start in all cases, it's just a reflection of them being better than the people behind them, that's a fallacy. It's a complete fallacy. And so that's what we need to understand and promote and go forward with so that we don't tell people that there's a problem where there's not one. Rui Hachimura needs to be utilized properly. And once utilized properly, you can probably get 30 points out of him, 20, 10, whatever. His size can get him where he's going. But he has to be utilized in a way that showcases his talent, and he needs to continue to build his talent and develop because he hasn't played a lot of basketball. Washington never played him, and he got hurt a lot of the time. Never developed. Same with Bamba. This is why we can't shrink the bench and get these guys, get the most out of these guys because they need to play. That's the bottom line. And when you're leaning on players that have a bunch of mileage, why would you lean on them even further near the end of the season when it matters the most? You got to lean on their help to keep them healthy to play through those games that matter the most. It's like a guy plays 82 games and then in like the 95th game, he's in the playoffs when it's super stressful and now you got him playing 50 minutes. And you wonder why he gets hurt. Did you not learn anything from Golden State when KD and Clay went down the same damn game? We didn't learn anything. This is why that happens. Shrink the bench. Yeah, shrink your bench. Play more of those guys all season long so you have them in rotation to be reliable at those times. You're not leaning on scrubs. This ain't the 80s. So that is what I wanted to say, man. Let's just get out of that mindset because it's better to strategize, allowing some of your better players to come off your bench anyway. It keeps your team fuller. It gives you more of attack. You want better guys coming off your bench sometimes. So that's where it has to. We have to understand it. It's not the end of the world that Rui Hachimura is in a slump and our coach isn't utilizing it properly. He's a new player. We just got him. And we have a bunch of attacking offensive talent around him that has to get their shots as well. So he's not going to be able to be showcased properly in this lineup right now for that reason and several others. So it's like people are going to have to chill while he's slumping because the fact that his role is changing with LeBron being removed from the lineup also contributes to it as well. And when you look when he's on the floor, he really does contribute pretty good from game to game to game. He did have a bad game in the previous one, but we've also had games where he helped us in the clutch, the fourth quarter. You know what I'm saying? Some of the games I told y'all, we couldn't win without him. So as far as me valuing Rui Hachimura, I value both he and Troy Brown, and I don't want us to get rid of either one of them at this point because I think they help to the fullness of what it is that we are right now. Now, as pieces get changed and removed, people have different roles once again, so that may determine how much we may need Rui Hachimura or Troy Brown going forward. I may not have the same role for him. It might be a better way to utilize Rui next season, so you may not want to let go of him, just the same, just because Troy Brown is playing so well. Maybe you can't utilize Troy Brown as well as you are this year with next year's roster. It's just no way of knowing. So that's why you got to isolate what is hypothetical in regards to a player versus what you're looking at when he's not being utilized correctly and simultaneously slumping. So that's the gist of the thought, man. It's not a whole lot deeper than that. I got a heck of a headache right now. So I'm going to get back to finishing my workout and listen to this video and then try to get something to eat. So that's what I got to say. Thank you all for watching BDL44. I'm out.